Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm just going to start it off by introducing Victoria van Kamp, which is Vice Chair of EVA West, and I'd like her to do the opening remarks.
Hello, everybody, and I'm so happy to hear and see so many here. I know that lots of people are watching, actually all around the world, if we have managed to reach out with this invitation. My name is Victoria. I'm based in Gothenburg and the Vice Chair of Engineering Academy West. I'm also the Chief Technology Officer at the big industry company SKF. We are, of course, interested, all of us are interested in art and blockchain, but we are also interested in this technology because it is a way forward for intellectual property and licensing rights. Right now, the main news is art, and I'm so looking forward to Gustav, who will be the moderator here today, and then listening to Gina and Nicole to explain to the rest of us what really are these NFTs, and is this for real, or is it another tulip bubble? Gustav, I leave over to you.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for introducing us. And hi, everybody. My name is Gustav Wallström, and I'll be the moderator today. Today's topic is one that's been trending around the world now for almost a year, and that is how the blockchain technology has been adopted within the art world and made it possible for us to own digital art and collectibles in a way that's never really been thought of before. So in many people's eyes, this uprising really started with a first of its kind art auction back in March of 2001, when a collection by the digital artist Beeple sold for $70 million at Christie's. And this auction really marked two firsts for the industry. Christie's was the first major auction house to offer a purely digital work with a unique NFT or non-fungible token, which is a word we're going to come back to. You don't have to understand it now. We're going to come back to it and explain it. Secondly, it also accepted cryptocurrencies, in this case, Ether, as a form of payment alongside the other standard forms of payment for this lot. And considering the fact that the 255-year-old auction house has sold some of the most famous paintings in our history, from the only known portrait of Shakespeare created during his lifetime, or the last discovered paintings by Leonardo da Vinci, and now putting their stamp of approval on the sales of these types of digital assets, really kicked the market into a frenzy. And you could probably say that it went very viral and very mainstream. So in today's webinar, we're going to discuss this topic a bit closer. We're going to get to understand the technology and what the technology really enables, and maybe how can it be used in the future. And of course, we're going to ask Christie's if this is something for the art community, or is this the future? Hence, I've invited Gina Perry, who is head of sales at Safelo, Sweden's leading crypto exchange. Gina first discovered cryptocurrencies in 2013 and has been, let's see here, and has been a crypto advocate since 2018. She founded Sveablocks, an educational platform which aims to decrease the gender gap in the blockchain space. In addition, Gina founded the Bolivian Blockchain Association, an organization that seeks to end the Bolivian ban of cryptocurrencies by improving the general understanding of blockchain technology. And we also have the honor to have with us from the United States, from New York, Nicole Sales, who is the business director of digital arts and sales and NFTs at Christie's. Nicole was the person who really spearheaded the auction with Beeple, which started this whole new generation of sales. And I'm delighted to have you here to pick your brain a bit about why and what led Christie's to go down this path and what we should expect in the future. So with that said, I would like to inform you all and our viewers that we want you, of course, to engage with us and ask us questions. I'm going to flip it over to Henrik to show us where people might engage with us and might ask us questions during this hour talk. Henrik?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much, Gustav. My name is Henrik, and I will be here in the background throughout the seminar, and I will monitor your guys' questions in the chat. So my plan is to aggregate as many of the questions as possible. And then in the end of the panelist sessions, at the Q&A session, I will put in as many as possible, as many as we have time for. So before we get started, I thought I would take a moment to at least show you guys how to ask these questions so that we find them in the right format. We will be using the chat role function, and you can find this function available on the IVA web page. So what you do is you go to the event page that I have shared with you right here, and you scroll down, and underneath the chat or underneath the stream, you can find the chat. So you, what you do is sign in as a guest, you write your name, and then voila, you're in. So here you can post questions, preferably in English, so that nothing is lost in translation. And this procedure will look about the same if you're doing it on a mobile device. So one final remark is that you guys that are watching this on YouTube, you're going to have to go in to the web page, the event web page, and scroll down to be able to ask questions. So what you do again is you enter the web page, you scroll down, you sign in as a guest, and then you can start asking questions and partake in the discussion. So with that said, I will leave you back over to Gustav, and I will stay in the background looking at the questions.
Thank you so much, Henrik. And all right, everybody, let's start from the beginning here. Let's get attuned with the technology. And, you know, think like the technology that makes this whole owning digital assets actually that makes it possible. So I'll turn to you, Gina. You know, I can welcome you into the picture. And I'll start off with a nice and easy question for you. And that is, what is the blockchain technology? On a very basic level. So take it easy on us now, because everybody needs to understand this to get a...
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's quite a pleasure to be here. And I'm hoping to be able to demystify what a lot of people think is complex technology. I would describe blockchain as two different types. Actually, there are both private and public blockchains. And I will speak about the public blockchains today because the very first blockchain in the world is actually the Bitcoin blockchain. It's a public blockchain that is decentralized. It's internet-based and decentralized because anyone can download the code for this open source protocol. So it's just a protocol. Everyone can download it. You can be active in this blockchain by verifying transactions. So it's not more than just a decentralized ledger of data that is internet-based. And obviously, this gives quite a few different possibilities to innovate. If you have this type of ledger that you can add any type of information to, and you can ensure that it's immutable, then obviously the use cases are quite numerous. And about, so the very first document that wrote about the Bitcoin protocol was made in 2008, the white paper of Bitcoin, but the so-called Genesis block, which was the very first transaction that was verified in the blockchain, was in 2009 in January. So it's not too long ago, and this technology is still nascent technology. And I believe that the interesting part of blockchain technology is that it simply verifies information, and that verification is protected well, algorithmically protected, and obviously also through the validation of this change. And that is used, sorry, and that is using cryptography. And the cryptography is actually what makes this technology immutable, but also the decentralization. Because if you are to change any of these records in the ledger, then the entire network needs to agree on that change. So because of the fact that you don't have one particular node or one central point, obviously you have a very high layer of immutability. So that, I would say, I hope, was a simple description of blockchain technology. So a decentralized internet-based ledger. And because of the fact that cryptographic technology is being used, it's very safe. And I think that's why it has been applied not only in the private sector, but obviously also when it comes to creation of other digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies, different generations of such, and also smart contracts. And now, as we're going to speak about NFTs today, that's also using this type of technology.
Thank you for that explanation. Could you just clarify, when you say immutable, what do you really mean? Because that's, might be a new word for people watching. So is it, just describe that word for us.
Of course, when any information is added to the blockchain, because of the fact that there are quite a few, in the case of the Bitcoin network, for instance, there are approximately 11,000 nodes that contribute to making sure that the network is safe, and making sure that the data that enters the blockchain is validated. And once this validation takes place, because of the fact that there are so many participants and they're everywhere around the world, to change a record of, let's say, only one participant is impossible. You need to change the records for everyone. And that is the immutable layer, meaning that in Swedish, the word is oföränderlig for those of you who are from Sweden. So meaning that it's not impossible to change, but it requires a very, very high level of consensus to allow this type of change. And this is why it's also considered to be very secure, because it's not easy to tamper this information.
All right. So one of my questions was, is it safe? Like, can the blockchain get hacked? And I'm guessing you just answered that because it is immutable. Has it been hacked? Like, well, let's just say for the sake, the Bitcoin blockchain.
The Bitcoin blockchain has never been hacked. What has been hacked is a decentralized autonomous organization that gave birth to the second largest public blockchain in the world, called Ethereum. But the blockchain itself, Bitcoin blockchain, has not been hacked. And in addition, in order to, for instance, tamper the blockchain, and let's say I want to maliciously attack the blockchain, and what I can do is that I can collude with a set of nodes, and then we could together, if I gain access to more than 51% of the entire network, then we could overthrow the current mechanism that is in place to have the consensus. But it's extremely unlikely that one individual, let's say, would have access to so many thousands and thousands of nodes globally to orchestrate something. So it's extremely unlikely for that to happen. You need enormous amounts of power as well in order to do that. From now I'm talking about energy as in power. So it's very unlikely. However, there are newer blockchains, and because of the fact that they're new, they don't have as many validating nodes as big ones such as Ethereum and Bitcoin, and those can be attacked and hacked. But as I said earlier, it requires for more than 51% of the participating nodes to agree on such an attack.
You said there's other blockchains. What's the difference, for people out there? Most of us can name Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe Polkadot, Solana, Cardano. What's like the difference between all these types of blockchains out there?
So there are so-called federated blockchains that could be created by a consortia of different companies or banks. that particular blockchain can be used for a very specific environment or for a very specific interaction, I would say, between these companies. So it could also be used as a time-saving blockchain, or from a cost perspective as well, it's more efficient to have that type of a federated blockchain network. But if you look at the public ones, the ones that are internet-based, I would say there are different generations of blockchains as well. It's interesting that you mentioned, for instance, Polkadot, because Polkadot was created in order for quite a few different types of blockchains to be able to communicate, because today many blockchains act as silos. So you would have the Bitcoin blockchain, and then you have the Ethereum blockchain, which has specific sets of capabilities. And then obviously there's a Polkadot, as you mentioned, or Solana. But what would be obviously very interesting is for all of these blockchains to be able to interact and communicate, and be able to also, I would say, through this collaboration, to open up a completely different new technological development. And I think that's what a lot of people believe that Polkadot could contribute with. So, and then there are obviously also so-called layer 2 solutions. I don't want to get too technical, but if you take a large public blockchain such as Ethereum, it has become very popular for creating NFTs or smart contracts. And what this makes is that in order to verify this information, you obviously need to incentivize the nodes in the platform, and you do so by rewarding them with Ether, which is the currency of Ethereum. And by doing this, obviously the fees for any transaction, if it's highly used, will increase. So there, in addition to, let's say, I want to mint an NFT, I'm just going to give a very brief example. And my NFT is minimal. It's not going to be 10,000s of NFTs that I'm trying to mint. So I'm not going to be high on the priority list of verification. But in order to bump myself up, what I can do is to increase the gas fees that I'm willing to pay, which is the transaction fee. And once I do that, I could get verified faster. But this obviously creates a lot of congestion in the blockchain. There are a lot of actors, there's plenty of activity. And what happens then is that the verification fees increase. And at times they're very, very high. So now there are quite a few different blockchains innovating and trying to reduce that particular issue. And those are called so-called layer 2 solutions. And these layer 2s, for instance, such as Polygon, they build on the Ethereum blockchain, but they reduce or create a more ample infrastructure on top of it so that the fees can be reduced. So I think that's also very interesting. And that's a third generation type of blockchain, I would say.
Right. So we got first, second, and third generation blockchains. Would you say which industry is like the most predominant user right now? And what are the use cases for a blockchain, right now or coming in the future? From how do you see it?
I know that within the IoT sector, that blockchain technology has been heavily used, because if we look at the Internet of Things and the amount of components and the interdependencies between such, obviously to be able to use smart contracts is quite powerful, because then you don't have the manual overlay, you have a very cost-saving mechanism in place, and in addition, you have the transparency. So my knowledge is that in IoT, so when it comes to verification of, let's say, an infotainment system in the automotive industry, I know that there's also for supply chain, there are quite a few specialized blockchain initiatives such as VeChain, because you want to make sure that, for instance, the cargo of oil crude oil that you're transporting from the Cape of Good Hope to, let's say, the northern parts of the hemisphere, you want to make sure that the cargo actually contains that amount. And you can do that also with smart contracts and blockchain technology. So I think that the use cases are quite abundant, I would say, but probably where you can see the most usage of blockchain technology today is in finance, as in decentralized finance, that it's heavily used for protocols that leverage, let's say, possibility of having loans or using cryptocurrencies as collateral for loans, or for any type of transaction where you typically would need to have a third party, because the technology is, so to speak, trustless. You don't need to have a third party to trust that particular transaction. So by removing this middleman or the third party, you reduce cost, and that probably is applicable, especially I would say in the industries that I mentioned earlier, in IoT and or the industries of supply chain management, and then obviously in finance.
Just like one quick question, is the blockchain here to stay? Do you think it's here, you know, for the long term? Are we going to start more using, or let me frame this question, you know, for our users or our viewers out there, when's the first time they will be, you know, able to use a blockchain? Well, not able to use, but when's the first time you think that most people will be using the blockchain?
There are quite a few private initiatives. I know that Azure, which is the blockchain as a service, has been adopted by quite a few different software as a service companies, such as IBM and also Microsoft. I do believe, however, that the public blockchains, which are the ones where innovation is extremely high, such as Ethereum or Polkadot, etc., that probably is going to, depending on the development of NFTs, for instance, is probably something that we could develop into what we also saw in the, let's say, the 90s when it comes to the internet and the adoption, the adoption rate. Sorry, I got something on my throat. I think that that's currently where we are. We have a very static way of looking at blockchain technology. And so far, I think that because of the lack of understanding of the potentials of cryptocurrencies, and because of issues that we have seen with protocols and also, let's say, illicit usage to a certain extent and environmental impact, then there's obviously going to be a trade-off where a lot of people consider, well, crypto is a bit cumbersome and blockchain technology is good, but crypto is bad. And I think what needs to be addressed is that blockchain technology is a predecessor of cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies is digital goods, but the actual technological building blocks, which I think that cryptocurrencies are developing into becoming something much more interesting, because now with immutable products such as NFTs, then obviously anyone could use an NFT in any way, in theory, because it's just a certification or validation of authenticity on a blockchain. And I think it's fantastic that it's being used, for instance, within art and for a content provider, or let's say, if you want to, you can, as an artist, you can release a music NFT as well. Mm-hmm. And that NFT could, in theory, be, okay, I give access through this NFT, I give access to recordings in my studio of my new record, or backstage pass, or let's say a signed t-shirt, etc. So I think the applications are limitless. So in that sense, if we look at the post-pandemic environment that we have today, with a very, very high speed of digitization all over our society, I think that probably just now, this year, maybe the coming year, is going to become a bit more tangible for people, that NFTs and cryptocurrencies are sort of intertwined with our normal economy and our normal goods. So I think it's not far. just to, because now you're mentioning smart contracts and NFT. I just want to take it back a little bit and say, okay, so now we know the blockchain, the digital ledger, which is immutable. How does, because smart contracts, that's a layer or program onto the blockchain, and smart contracts are the enablers of us owning an NFT. So my question now is, what is a smart contract and how can that be used in the blockchain? Yes, and thank you. It's a bit tricky sometimes to sort of dissect the different layers of this technology. I should have been a bit more considerate about the actual building blocks. So I wanted to show one particular. I'm just going to share my screen, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. So we started off by talking about Ethereum, which is the second largest public blockchain. And what Ethereum does is more or less to create an ecosystem. The main aim of this protocol was initially to replace everything that is a third party. And how do you do that? Well, you need to be able to create technology where you don't need to have an intermediary, where the technology itself is sufficient and trustless. Meaning that with the lines of code that I write, and I agree with, let's say, a particular list of items that I want to have executed, or requirements or needs, and that's easily just written down in a code. And that particular code is a smart contract. And the smart contract itself could be anything, because what it does is that it's a programmed code that executes after specific logic. So these decentralized applications, which smart contracts also are allowing us to act in a very autonomous way, and autonomous and in also very trustworthy way, because it's all public. You know, these particular ledgers have so-called explorers, where I can go in on the internet and see, this was, for instance, verified now. This is the block that has been verified for this particular transaction. This is my NFT, etc. So what Ethereum does, because this was the very first protocol to create the smart contract capability, is that it allows us to create backups of information that are cost efficient and accurate. And accurate because this code will not execute unless all the parameters of the smart contract are filled. Meaning that, let's say I want to take a loan, and I use my crypto or whatever as a collateral, and I agree with one party or several that this is going to be the condition of the contract, that I would put in, let's say, 5 Ethereum or Ether into a protocol. And whenever I want to borrow money, I need to have 5 in that particular protocol. Otherwise, I won't be able to borrow using that as a collateral, which means that in a normal environment, you need to have a bank to ensure that the liquidity is there. You need to have a third party that also understands that this is what you want to execute. These are your requirements, and these are the lender's requirements. And all of this information is done contractually in code, which means that B is not going to execute unless A executes. And that's going to create a side effect of within the chain, which allows for a very seamless, I would say, interaction that is programmatic rather than human in that sense. And I think that's why, sorry?
So would you say if I go to, instead of going to a bank and taking out a loan, I would go to the blockchain instead to take out and use a smart contract to take out a loan, or say real estate? If I don't want to use a real estate agent, you could just make a smart contracts between the buyer and the seller. And when something executes, it executes. And when it's programmed, it's done. You can't really reverse it.
That's correct. That's correct.
Oh, okay.
And the uses, as you mentioned, could also be applied to real estate or in theory to any type of interaction where a third party is needed in today's environment, in today's world.
Why isn't it? Because if it's such a great technology, why isn't it so widely adopted yet? Is it because people are afraid of it or scared, or is it just that, it's the word blockchain, smart contracts, it's like cryptocurrency, and then it's something bad? What would you say?
Yes, I think it's probably a combination of what you mentioned, and also about the notion that there's this stigma attached to cryptocurrencies. And what very few people might know is that cryptocurrencies are used in many economies in order to create some sort of an environment where they are financially excluded, for instance. Or where you have a draconian government that doesn't really allow you to transfer funds from your account to another. There are quite a few different things, but I believe that a lot of people don't even know that sometimes they're using smart contracts, because an NFT, for instance, is a smart contract.
All right. So I'll stop you there, and I'll ask you the next question I had. So, what part of this widespread adoption of NFTs does the smart contract have? What's the technology here? What enables a smart contract for you and me to buy and sell NFTs?
Mm-hmm. And so what Ethereum did with the smart contract is that it created standards. And the different standards were more or less, let's say, frameworks of code saying that if you use this standard, then you can create other crypto tokens. You can create other cryptocurrency based on our standard, and you can verify that within our blockchain. Another standard could be, okay, this is going to be a standard for non-fungible goods. And then you can use this standard to create NFTs, for instance. And this is what happened with Ethereum. So the smart contracts are applied as other types of cryptocurrencies, or they can also become an NFT. So it's really just building blocks. So smart contracts have multiple usage. And if you have, let's say, an array of different smart contracts that are executed, let's say, for a larger purpose, then it's usually called decentralized applications. So it's an application, for instance, like the biggest exchange in the world that is decentralized, a so-called DEX, it's Uniswap. That is, for instance, a decentralized application, but it's built as smart contracts. So the building blocks of that are smart contracts. So I think to exclude a smart contract or to exclude, let's say, a blockchain, then you won't have the NFTs, because you can have the digital signature of something, but it's not going to, if it's not verified through a public blockchain, then it's not going to be a real NFT, because then you will not verify it and use the cryptographic technology of the blockchain to ensure that it's actually your NFT, or that it's that this is actually the original artwork, etc.
Mm-hmm. So when you say original artwork, how does the NFT, how does that correlate? Original artwork, and I have like the original NFT. How does that correlate? Could you answer that?
I will try. I hope that my reply makes sense. So let's say that I buy a Cryptopunk, which was the very first NFT, and it was a standard that was actually used. The same standard is used now today for other cryptocurrencies. It's a standard that was, let's say that I have a Cryptopunk, so I take a photo of it. Hello.
Yeah. No, I mean, I stopped.
Sorry, I lost you, so I thought maybe I'm alone.
No. I'm here. I just stopped your presentation because I want you in big picture.
So what happens is that I have my particular Cryptopunk, and then I put it on, let's say, Instagram, and I show everyone this is my Cryptopunk. There's nothing hindering you from taking a screenshot of that particular Cryptopunk, and then you can say that it's yours. But I know, and it's socially accepted, that the Cryptopunk is mine because it can be verified in the blockchain. I can simply use the address of that particular smart contract, put it into the explorer of, let's say, Ethereum, because it's based on their standard. And I can easily show that this is in fact my Cryptopunk, and there might be thousands of copies of it, but the original Cryptopunk is mine. And I think that's why it's so interesting with NFTs today, because it's the verification, or I would say the digital signature and verification of a good, which means that you actually have the possibility to going from an economy that we have today, which is very much digital services economy, and transform it into a digital goods economy. Because in the digital goods economy, a good is something that is transferable because you can prove ownership. Right? You can prove the value, but it's very difficult to give something that is digital a transferable property. But with NFTs, you can, because that is the difference, the transferable property of a good that is digital.
All right, Gina, thank you for all your answers to my questions. I think we have to move forward now to our next speaker. And before that, I'm just going to remind everybody that you can surely engage with us and ask questions. Henrik, could you show us just quickly where you can ask the questions? And after that, we'll move forward because I have to get on to the next speaker.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, you enter the event page on Iva's own webpage, and you can see the stream, under which you find the chat function. In the chat function, you can ask questions. And we already got some really good ones coming up here, which we can hopefully address later on. So I'll be keeping it up with the chat and making sure that we catch any good questions.
Great, great, great. All right. So thank you so much. So before we move on to our next topic, I would like to share with you my NFT collection, just because. Let's see if I can get my picture to start. There we go. So, and I want to share with you all what I realized when I dove into the industry, and that is the community you gain. When you buy into an NFT project, the community is something special. You know, people really get behind the creator and try to help out and make it as successful as possible. And you know, they help promote, and you know, they welcome new people into the fray, like myself. Of course, one of the main driving opportunities in buying an NFT is that it can go up substantially in value, and we've seen that. And the more people that buy in, the higher the price. But still, I must say that my first impressions is that you find something then more than just a piece of art. You find a bunch of like-minded individuals who, for the most part, wants the best for the artist. And I know everybody's first question on everybody's mind is, what did they cost me? How much did these NFTs cost me? And I'll do a little cliffhanger because I'll tell you right after my next speaker has, I've talked to my next speaker, which is Nicole Sales. How are you doing? Nicole, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. I'm just trying to turn my video back on.
There you
How's
go.
everyone doing? Hi.
Hi, good. Thank you. So now we've heard a lot about the blockchain, about smart contracts and NFTs. And now I just kind of want to kick it over to you and ask you, what was it that made a 250-year-old auction house like Christie's decision to dive headfirst into this industry, which is quite niche in the beginning? It was quite niche. It wasn't this popular as it is now.
Yeah, totally. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. It was really wonderful listening to Gina. I've been on just a handful of these panels throughout this crazy year. And Gina, you were incredibly articulate, and I learned a lot from you. So thank you. So yeah, Christie's 255-year-old company, as you said. So basically in the end of October of 2020, which is before this whole craze happened, we sold a Robert Alice painting, a tangible physical painting that was accompanied by an NFT. So it just had a digital certificate, a certificate of authenticity, basically on the blockchain, as Gina described. And then by us doing that, we got the attention of Maker's Place, which is a NFT marketplace, similar to Super Rare or Nifty Gateway, or just, a marketplace that only sells pretty much art-based NFTs. They reached out to us proactively in the beginning of 2021 and said, hey, what do you think about selling just a purely digital art, just the NFT? And so we said, yeah, of course, that sounds great. We're always happy to experiment, try new things. So we worked with them to pick an artist. That's how we picked people. So we reached out to him and got his, interest in this. And he was, very interested in doing this. So we worked with him to kind of look through his works that he had done in the past. And we kind of came to the conclusion that we wanted this to be, a big bang, really come out. So he decided to mint, which I can define in a second, but he decided to mint all of his works that he had done every day for the past 13 years as one NFT, which was the 5,000 everydays. So minting is really just generating the NFT, putting putting the code onto the blockchain and registering it, generating it onto the blockchain. So we sold that. We were originally going to put it in our first open sale, which is our contemporary art sale for emerging art. We experiment a lot with new contemporary artists, and we had no idea what this would sell for. We were thinking, yeah, maybe it'll sell for $1 million, and that'll be so happy. Like, wow, that's crazy. So we had no idea, had absolutely no idea that it would sell for $69 million in the end. We opened the sale at $100, so the first person could bid $100 on the work.
Wow, $100.
Yeah. And in the first 8 minutes of the sale opening for bidding, it got to $1 million. And so we knew we had something crazy going on, and yeah, the rest is history.
I'm guessing you got a lot of publicity out of that little, what do you say, that venture.
Yes.
Has it been all good, or has it been, bad and good?
Definitely mixed in the beginning, for sure. I think a lot of our traditional art collectors were taken aback. Like, what is this? Do I need to know what this is? I don't understand it. So a little bit of, apprehension because of a lack of understanding. So we are trying very hard to reach both our new audience of crypto collectors, which are vastly growing. 70% of the clients last year who transacted with us in digital art were new to Christie's. So we're trying to, have, real engagement opportunities for them and bring them into the Christie's family. But at the same time, really work to educate the traditional art collectors into what this collecting category can be and the value that it holds. So I think we're getting to a place now where our traditional art collectors are understanding a bit more, and some of the stuff that we did at the end of last year in our November evening sales in New York really helped with that.
Who is the buyer? For myself, my dad has been an antique salesman for 35 years with my mom with a shop here in Stockholm. I show him this, he thinks it's, I would say a word here, but it go beep. And so is there, is there a new buyer in town, or is it more, more like the old buyers are getting it? And, the penthouses at the Fifth Avenue is filling up with NFTs, or...
There's definitely new buyers in town. So the buyer of the Beeple work in March 2021, that was public. So that Metakoven, that was in the news. He's a tech entrepreneur, Bitcoin investor, early Bitcoin investor. So most of the buyers and bidders who are transacting with us in the digital space are what we call crypto native clients. So they, made their fortune in cryptocurrency, Web3 companies. Most of them are working in startups in that space, blockchain-based companies.
Okay. And Beeple, he must have been, he had a following before this whole sale, I'm guessing, but he must have been blown away, or I know his works probably have skyrocketed, I would imagine.
Yes, I think so. He definitely had a following, which is one of the reasons why we picked him to be the first work that we sold in this medium, in this category. It's incredibly important. What we look for when we are choosing digital artists and choosing projects to sell at Christie's is an existing community, which you touched on briefly when you showed your collection. But it is so important to, when you're investing in NFTs, or when you're looking for projects to buy, that you're really understanding their community. That's probably the biggest driver of success. Christie's and the other auction houses and marketplaces, Christie's at least doesn't, we don't feel like we create demand. We just amplify existing communities and enlarge them and make them, reach a global audience that we have. So I think that's one of the reasons why Beeple was so successful, is he had an existing community, and then now that it's on Christie's, it was amplified, and people were able to kind of join in an existing community as opposed to build one from scratch.
On screen, I'm going to share my slide again. We have two NFTs. One of them is the Crypto Bull, is a part of the Beeple 5,000 days or 5,000 works. Mm-hmm. And the other one is a Bored Ape Yacht Club. And I think this is owned by Eminem, and he bought it for about 400,000 US dollars. So approximately 4 million Swedish kroners. You know, could you say what traits does these type of NFTs have? What are you looking for really when you see these types of art?
Sure. So, you know, I would say art, the actual aesthetic of the art is always subjective, whether you're looking at digital art or, you know, a tangible painting on your wall. I think that's definitely a subjective quality. So I think the differences between this, just to take a step back, is the Beeple work, the bull on the left, is what you might call a one of one. So it's made by, you know, an artist who is, you know, making art digitally, his or herself, using technologies on, you know, on the computer to create art. And it's one work. It's not part of a, I mean, this is part of a series in terms of, you know, he made one every day, but it's not like there's another, you know, exact bull that kind of looks the same. You know, this is one work that he did at one time, and it's one piece of art. Whereas the Bored Ape Yacht Club, that is what's called a, you know, profile picture type collection, or PFP, people call them. So, you know, they're usually dropped in groups of 10,000, and they all pretty much look the same, but they're all different. And then they are different traits that are either more rare or more common that can lead to more scarce traits that lead to higher value. So I think when you're looking at these types of projects, really what I said before is kind of the number one is, what's the community like? Is it active? A good thing to look about when you're looking at value is in the ratio of owners to number of works in the collection is always nice to see. And if it's around 50%, it's generally a good project. What you don't want to see is, you know, 1,000 works dropped and they're only owned by, you know, 50 people. You know, you want to see at least, you know, 500 people buying that collection.
Mm-hmm. Another question that comes in mind is, how do you present it? How do you hang it up? You know, the guy that what's his name, that bought the 5,000, or, you know, an ape. How do you present it? Does Christie's go to people's apartment and help hang them up on the wall, or yeah? How does that come about?
There's a lot of different ways that you can display your NFTs or your digital art for now. I think it really depends on how the artist wants it presented. So there's a lot of different frame companies, like Smart Frames. Atomic Forms is one that is gaining some traction, for example. There are different kind of basically smart frames that are being used. There are these portals that are also being developed where they're more sculptural like things for larger, more like 3D looking NFTs where they can create a sort of hologram things. And we're very early on in the development in terms of displaying these. So I think there's a lot more innovation to come here. And I think the rise in NFTs, which not only in the exhibition angle, but also there's so many other ancillary businesses that are needed to pop up in order to make this market a bit more mature. But in addition to actually physically displaying them, a lot of people use them as their avatars in the metaverse. They make it their profile picture. So it's definitely creates kind of a social, situation.
So moving forward now, I got like one last question, and we put some questions into the audience. Moving forward for Christie's, what are you looking for? Are you going to continue selling NFT collections? Is there like another NFT collectible that we don't know of yet that is coming, like in fashion, or what's the future looking like?
Yeah, so at Christie's, we kind of have two separate strategies that we're working towards. One is continuing to place masterpiece level digital artworks alongside masterpiece contemporary artists. So selling the Beeples of the world right next to the Basquiats of the world. You know, we really feel that digital art is just another medium of contemporary art making, and it'll just be, you know, there's sculptures, there's painters, there's drawers, there's digital artists. So, you know, we really feel like this needs to be elevated to a serious collecting category. And, we are honored to have the ability to, kind of create a more discerning eye and a curatorial eye towards a lot of this very saturated market right now. So that's one lane. And then secondly, we are continuing to present new, younger emerging digital artists and give them a voice, working directly with these artists, which Christie's historically doesn't really do. Typically we work with collectors and sell, works by collectors to other collectors. Here, we're actually getting the opportunity to work directly with the artists and tell their stories and help, bring them to a wider stage. So NFTs are definitely here to stay for Christie's, and we're very excited about the future.
Fun to hear. So, Henrik, I'd like to get some questions from the audience. Do you have some for us? Have you aggregated anything interesting?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually got a bunch of questions here. I will actually start on this theme of counterfeits, which I think is interesting. I would start by asking you, Nicole. So, I mean, counterfeit, tangible paintings, that's been an issue for many, many years, obviously. Do you see that this type of technology could help, an auction house like Christie's to, for example, make sure that you guys are selling, the real deal? Could you, for example, mint an NFT for a physical painting when you put it on the market?
Yeah, so I think, to be quite honest, I think, obviously I knew about the blockchain a couple of years ago, and there are certain companies that were working towards putting provenance on the blockchain to exactly address what you just mentioned. And to be honest, I think us at Christie's, we kind of thought that would be the first use case for art and blockchain technology. Obviously, that was not the case. It has the potential to completely revolutionize fraud detection and, as you say, restitution issues like that, and really work towards that. However, that requires mass adoption from a very old institution like the traditional art world. So I think the rise in NFTs and digital art have pushed that along, but I think we are still maybe a year or so behind that kind of taking on full adoption, because you need network effects for that to work, right? You need everybody to do it all at the same time. You need all the auction houses, all the galleries, all the owners to kind of register their stuff in order for it to be useful. So I think the technology is definitely there, and I hope that it does take on, but it hasn't quite yet.
All right, thank you. So on the same topic, we have a question in the chat here saying that, to my understanding, the NFT contains a hash with the underlying art or image. So what if one creates a copy of this image, for example, and then changes just a tiny little bit of it, and then mints a new NFT? How is that how can that be distinguished from the original? Is fake actually an issue on the blockchain as well? And how do you determine what is? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are tons of fakes on blockchain, actually. I mean, that's actually a big problem on OpenSea because it's such a peer-to-peer network. OpenSea is the largest NFT marketplace by far. And it's kind of like a Craigslist. Anyone can list, anyone can buy. So it's very decentralized and not regulated at all, which obviously is to the ethos of Web3. However, it has, some detriments, whereas there are lots of fakes popping up. However, if you are technically literate, you can look through the code and see when it was minted and who it was minted by. So in theory, you can't make an exact copy, and you'll be able to see that it was minted after another one, but that requires a lot of technical due diligence that, a lot of, everyday people might not take the time to do. So, there are some companies coming out, and Gina might know more from a technical perspective of, being able to verify this a little bit easier for the everyday person.
Yeah, Gina, do you want to comment on that question?
Sure, I can do that. It is like Nicole was saying. Sorry, I tried to start my camera, but it's not working. Okay. It's an issue, but I think it's not on the technology, but on the platform. And I think that's why I think rarities, for instance, are good, because a lot of people use rarity and there will be, I think that Coinbase is going to launch an NFT marketplace, and then I know Crypto.com just launched one. So I think there's definitely a development there as well, because as mentioned, I think we are currently at the internet in the 90s. quite a few improvements would be made. But I think the acceptance on whether something is real or not a counterfeit is also social. Let's just take a luxury bag. Probably there are so good copies that I can barely tell if it's really a Prada or if it's a fake one, because the counterfeiting industry is also evolved. But I think that just the knowledge of knowing that it comes with a certification card, I bought it in the store, etc. That's a social construct. That is the acceptance of something being real or something that is not a copy. But I don't think that if I would try to sell, let's say I have a Bored Ape copy somewhere, and I've changed something that makes it an original, but it's still a copy, and I will not be able to sell it as the original. So I think that has more to do with human nature than blockchain technology.
Thank you. Henrik, do we have more questions? So go right ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so I mean, this comes back a little bit to the starting point that you took, Gina. But we have a question here in the chat saying that by removing the third party, for example, through smart contracts, we also increase the amount of required knowledge that an individual person needs to be able to use this type of technology, right? So in what ways does that create, economical gaps between, for example, the people that have a lot of knowledge about this and people who don't? And generally speaking, like poor and wealthy and socioeconomic backgrounds and such. Do you have any reflections on that?
I actually see blockchain or crypto as an equalizer in many ways, because of the fact that it's decentralized and internet-based. I don't need to have a requirement list to be able to use this technology. In theory, what I can do, I mean, I'm not a coder, but Ethereum provides with a smart contract capability within the platform, which is just a standard. In theory, I can just create it myself by changing a few parameters. So I think that it has never been so easy to have access to information as today. And I think that it's difficult to source information. It requires some time and some investment, but the threshold to acquire knowledge is probably never has been so low. And I think that's why it's also so interesting with NFTs and why it has become this lowering of the technical threshold that everyone in crypto is hoping for, because if something is perceived as intricate, nobody will really try to use it. But with NFTs, the financial gains or the possibility to flip an NFT and to make tremendous amounts of ETH when you just started off with, let's say, a fraction of an ETH, I think that creates this hunger for knowledge as well. So, I mean, how do I spend my time? Now I'm talking about this part of the world, where we have information in overload. Would I rather spend time watching a video on how to mint something and how to create a smart contract, or would I rather just scroll through my Instagram flow? So I think that probably is the comparison to be made. Otherwise, if we make the comparison as, let's say, a village in Bolivia where there's no electricity, then it's a non-comparison because it's very difficult to see what the impact would be. But I think in general terms, that technology, if we look historically as well, I'm a bit of a technocrat, I think technology has helped us more than it has undermined our societies. So I think, and I hope that this will also be the case with blockchain technology.
All right, well, thank you for that perspective.
I think we have time for one more question before we have to start rounding it off. Do we have one, Henrik?
Yeah, we have one more question here that I actually found really interesting. It's related to, so for example, corruption. So could NFTs, are there any use cases for, NFTs and how to use them for combating corruption? Do you have any reflections on that?
Is that for me?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
I mean, if you take a fungible token, for instance, Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. So one Ether is always going to be an Ether. One crown is always a crown. However, if you look at the NFTs, because of the fact that there's only one particular token of that kind because it's non-fungible and it's not interchangeable, then that per se is, how should I say it? So the question was whether if NFTs could be used for fraud. So if it's reused properly, I mean, it depends on what type of fraud. It could be that corruption could also be that I'm forging, I don't know, I pretend to have a PhD and then I create a contract that, is that the question? I think I'm not sure if I understand correctly.
Yeah, or in any ways, if NFT technology could be used to combat corruption, I guess corruption in a broader sense, really.
Well, smart, yeah, because it's built on a smart contract, right? And that smart contract is verified in a public blockchain. And that public blockchain has transparency because it's also tied to an explorer. And because of the fact that that particular data or that particular block is verified through quite a few different nodes across the network, then yes, absolutely.
All right. I think we're just about to get out of time because it's 3 o'clock. So I won't keep you hanging all right now. I just want to present to you my NFT collection. And the question I had is, the question I would like Nicole could you evaluate my NFT collection? And I'll tell you a little bit about what it is so you can get the provenance. So the first one, the Mutant Club, it's one of 10,000. It was the first project I minted on the Cardano blockchain. The Crumbs Bakery, the cinnamon guy here, actually I bought for charity during Christmas, and it's one of 1,000 unique NFTs. And this Cardania, this in the middle here, is a plot of land in a game. I bought 5 plots of land in a game. So it would be cool to hear your verdict as the last thing. What do you think about my NFTs and what do you think about the value?
Well, I think in terms of future growth, I think gaming by far has the biggest growth opportunity this year. I think we're going to see tons of NFT and pay-for-play type games popping up. So good job buying that. I don't know about the communities of the 2 other NFT groups that you purchased. If I had to guess, I'd say, and this is totally out of left field, I'm going to guess the Mutant Club maybe is around 1 ETH max now, and I would say the bakery guy is maybe less than half an ETH, I would say now, and maybe the game. I'm not a big gamer yet. But I don't know, maybe 2 or 3.
Oh, that's a lot, I must say. I'm very happy that you thought that my little collection here was so much worth. But I'll tell you, so the mint price for the Mutant Club was 25 ADA, which was at the time around $50 or so. Now the price is 8 ADA. So $16. So I lost a little bit of money on that one. The game I minted for 40 ADA, which was at the time $80 per plot of land. And they're now 200 ADA per plot of land. So they, 2x or 3x. So I'm very happy about that one. And the last one is my cinnamon guy, which I bought for 0.05 ETH, but now you actually it's worth 0.5 ETH. So you were quite right about that one. That's the most valuable one, this little crumby guy here. So life's good, I guess. But I'm gonna just stop my screen sharing there and say thank you a lot to our speakers. I think you made it a lot more clearer, this industry, the NFTs, the blockchain. I think a lot of people out there has been uncertain, and they see and they read about it in the newspapers and media. And I think everybody now has a little bit more sense of what it is and what it's capable of. And I'm excited to watch the future. And I hope that everybody gets to enjoy the community within NFTs as I have, because it is something special. So from me here in Stockholm, to you out there in the world, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us. Bye.